There's no denying that the Montana Territory bred its share of legendary gunslingers in the turbulent years following the Civil War. Men like Shadow Jake Thompson, Iron Will Barrett, the notorious Reeves brothers, and the fearsome Deadeye Tom Fletcher. But perhaps none left a more mysterious legacy than Nathan "Ghost" Hawkins, a man whose very name would later send chills down the spines of even the most hardened outlaws. A silent rancher turned avenging angel, credited with sending 27 men to their graves, who once coldly stated, "Some men choose the path of violence. I simply became the consequence of their choice." Join me today as we delve into the story of the man they called Ghost, the silent guardian of Crimson Valley who proved that the deadliest predators are the ones you never hear coming. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Providence Springs, Montana Territory, spring of 1873. The town was like many others sprouting up across the frontier, a dusty main street lined with weather-beaten buildings, where hope and desperation danced together in the shadow of the looming Rockies. It was the kind of place where most folks minded their own business, which is exactly why Nathan Hawkins chose it. He rode in on a cool April morning, leading a pack mule loaded with supplies, his black duster catching the mountain wind. Those who witnessed his arrival would later recall two things: the distinctive Colt Navy revolver worn high on his hip, and the fact that he barely spoke above a whisper when he asked directions to the land office. The townspeople of Providence Springs were used to strangers passing through, but something about Hawkins was different. He carried himself with a quiet confidence that some mistook for timidity. Sheriff Caleb Dawson, a veteran lawman who'd seen his share of gunfighters and outlaws, watched the newcomer from the shade of his office porch. "There's two kinds of quiet men in this territory," he'd later write in his journal: "those who ain't got nothing to say, and those who've seen too much to speak of it." Hawkins struck me as the latter. Dr. Joseph Bennett was the first to actually engage with the mysterious newcomer, treating a deep cut on Hawkins's forearm from what the man claimed was a ranch accident. The doctor couldn't help but notice the web of old scars that told a different story: bullet wounds, knife marks, the kind of history written in flesh that no simple rancher should have. But Bennett was a man who understood discretion, and the questions he didn't ask spoke volumes about the respect Hawkins quickly earned in the community. Within a week, Hawkins had purchased the old Turner Ranch, 500 acres of prime grazing land nestled in a remote corner of Crimson Valley. The previous owner, Eleanor Turner, was a widow, whose husband's death had left her with more land than she could manage. She'd been holding out for the right buyer, turning down offers from both the Ryder Gang and various cattle barons who'd tried to pressure her into selling. There was something in his eyes, Eleanor would later tell Rebecca Mitchell, the local store owner, something that made me feel safe about selling to him, like he'd protect the land the way Thomas would have wanted. She wasn't wrong about Hawkins's protective nature, though she couldn't have imagined just how far that instinct would eventually reach. The man settled into his new property with methodical precision. He repaired fences, rebuilt the barn, and started raising a modest herd of cattle. He paid his bills promptly, attended church on Sundays, though he never sang with the congregation, and politely declined invitations to social gatherings. When spoken to, he responded with nods or the briefest of answers, earning him the local nickname, Silent Hawkins. Rebecca Mitchell, whose store served as the town's unofficial gathering place, noticed peculiar details about their new neighbor's shopping habits. He always bought ammunition in bulk, explaining it away as protection against wolves. His eyes would linger on wanted posters, though he never commented on them. And he had an uncanny habit of positioning himself with his back to the wall, keeping the door in sight at all times. But there were other oddities that didn't escape notice. The way he seemed to appear out of nowhere, when trouble stirred in town. How his eyes constantly scanned the horizon during his infrequent supply runs to Providence Springs. The fact that no one ever saw him without that Colt on his hip, worn with the kind of familiarity that spoke of years of use. Deputy Frank "Rusty" Wilson, young and eager to prove himself, once boasted at the saloon that he'd seen Hawkins practicing with his revolver in the early morning hours. "Never seen anything like it," he'd whispered, face pale from the memory. 6 bottles, 60 yards, 6 shots, all in the time it takes to draw a breath. But it wasn't the speed that scared me. It was how natural it looked, like breathing. The source of Hawkins' shooting prowess might have remained a mystery, if not for the arrival of Samuel Sage McAllister that fall. The retired lawman had tracked Outlaws across 5 territories before hanging up his badge, and he was sharing drinks with Sheriff Dawson when Hawkins walked past the saloon window. McAllister's hand froze midway to his glass, his weathered face turning ashen. "Lord Almighty," he breathed. I thought he was dead. Before Sheriff Dawson could ask for clarification, fate intervened in the form of thundering hoofbeats. The Ryder Gang, 20 strong, had just ridden into Providence Springs. Their reputation preceded them, a trail of robbed banks, burned ranches, and murdered lawmen stretching from Kansas to the Dakotas. And with them came the storm that would shatter the silence surrounding Nathan "Ghost" Hawkins forever. The air grew thick with tension as Cole Ryder's men dismounted, their spurs singing against the wooden sidewalks of Providence Springs. The town had managed to stay relatively peaceful until now, but everyone knew that was about to change.